Alright, welcome back to Kamen Review, episode 205. We are here reviewing, basically the movie Wars 2010, Kamen X, Kamen Double and Decade, along with the first two episodes of Kamen Double. Well, let's kind of talk about basically the two episodes themselves, now talk about the actual movie itself. I watched the movie last night. The first two episodes introduce basically our two double writers, along with basically the former chief, where it's kind of rushed through this one. They kind of expanded upon this in the movie with the beginning's night, where their chief just ups and dies while saving, the guy who's known as Philip, who's dressed like a girl who looks like a girl for some reason. By the way, the actor who plays Philip is the youngest actor to ever play Kamen Rider at the age of 16. Yes, seriously. And it's all about the Gale memories and the Gale library. It's all about USB drives, and the whole theme of the show is very much like a 30s style noir series. It's like 30s. It's crime noir told in the present day. In a fictional city in Japan known as Futo. And we get the first appearance also in this episode of their detective agency in this episode known as the Romi Detective Office. Which the main detective of this one is Shotaro Hideroki. The partner is Philip. And of course, basically, it's located in a place known as Kuroi Billiards Hall. Kind of interesting. We have in a billiards hall, we have as a cover. So apparently, the place where they filmed the office for the show has since been demolished. It was demolished 6 years ago to be replaced with a hotel restaurant. I guess basically because they probably had no use for it, but it was a nice location. The whole billiards type of thing is interesting. And of course, Phillips has basically a line that's popular with noir stuff. Want to ride with the devil. And then him and Soldier become Kamen Double. With this, people probably have seen it now, but because of the animated show that's on Crunchyroll right now. Yeah, believe it or not, this show has been milked out the wazoo. This is one of the most milked out shows I've ever heard of for Kamen Rider. Where, after the show wrapped up, there was like about 3 or 4 movies with him. Overall, like 6. Plus, of course, there's the sequel manga, which was adapted for an anime. And there was an animated movie featuring the same cast, but not the same, probably the same voices per se. So, basically, they're in this facility. Well, they explain it in the movie in the beginning's night, which was more of an expansion upon this flashback where they first come the Kamen Rider Double, and they beat some monsters. Then we jump into the present day, where Sotaro basically is just being a hard-boiled detective. Well, actually, first, before this, we see the debut of, the woman who's actually his former boss's daughter. Yes, who turns out to be the owner of the building. Anko Naromi. I'm like, that's interesting. Yes. Her father's name was Surichi Naromi. The actors who played our female lead of the show was actually pretty young at the time when she first did this part. Because the show came out in 2009, she was 18 when she did this role. She's now currently 34 years old. And apparently, she had, before looking basically personal life, the actress who played her, Hiroku Yamato, she had auditioned for Kamen many times after a fellow a castmate of hers named Tokaru Sota had starred in Kamen Deno. Who is he, you might ask? Why, he's the main actor of the show. Yep. And basically, it seemed like she looked at him as a role model. So then she eventually, she got married actually last year, believe it or not. Good for her. To a non-celebrity, but this actually was her. The only thing related TV-wise she was in. She's featured in all the movies featuring Double. Yep, which is basically 4 of them. And she was all featured in a movie for Kamen Wizard and a couple specials as basically her character. In a way, she's kind of like a spoiled brat. Interesting enough, basically her character was 20 when the show started. So, when she first gets there, she wants to evict, well, the detective works there. Not exactly clear why, because she's new in her building. She wants to evict him for reasons. Maybe she wants to run a business there. It's possible. Basically, she does own the building. Though I'm thinking, like, how is she paying the people who actually are in this building? Good question. So, and then, of course, we have this woman show up named Maria. Who is this woman, you might ask? This woman is the childhood friend of the male lead of the show, Sotaro. Where she's presented as sort of this femme fatale, where she has this boyfriend who has mysteriously disappeared, and she wants her former childhood sweetheart, to look for a missing boyfriend. Which she does, no problem. There was thinking about hats, which I'll talk about that soon. So, on the way there, and of course, basically, Ako proceeds to follow him because, of course, well, because basically she has no idea what the heck is going on. So, and of course, there's like a disaster in the tunnel, which of course there's this mysterious, very beautiful woman, which we find out is part of this very powerful family later on. Which I believe this family was the main bad guys of the show, the Setro family. Yes. Which, no mention the mother. Just the father and the two daughters. This is the youngest daughter, basically, we see here. And we see them, like, crouching and just doing this little weird walk. And we find out this disaster, where part of the building crashed on the ground, was caused by a monster known as a Depot. A Depot is basically, it's a similar idea what they explored over in 4Z, where they have this device and they eject themselves and they become a monster. And of course they fight him as this monster, and once the form is destroyed, they're restored back, no problem. And that's one thing I did notice, though, the fact that, because I had watched 4Z, which I had watched that, because the order I watched for Heisei Phase 2 is 4Z, O's, and now Double. And seeing this concept, it's something that O's did not revisit this at all, because it was a little different. 4Z did revisit this concept with the monster, which I didn't have a problem with it at all. But I didn't know about the fact that Double did this, but it was fine. So, it's a magma monster, and then we see him transform, and how he transforms here is interesting. I kind of did see this in the Movie Wars, I think it was 2012, I think it was, where you had O's here with 4Z, which is an amazing movie. I spoke to somebody about this at Ranger Stop a couple weeks ago, and they told me this actually was their favorite Kamen movie, which I agree, the movie's awesome. So basically, they have their hench devices, basically this thing where they pull out these sticks, which are the Geo member thing. They stick them in. Well, Philip has the green one. Shelter has a black one. Black one is Joker. The green one goes to Philip. And then Philip's mind goes into his rider, thus forming double. With a scarf, which makes a good, nice touch. And then he of course just collapses right inside the room there. And there's this, in the room he's in, there's a giant vehicle, which is obviously made of CGI for reasons, whatever. Though he does have his own motorcycle, believe it or not. It's this big hunking piece of machinery. It is huge. It's one of the biggest motorcycles I've ever seen for a Kamen Rider, where on the front of his back is black, but the rear end is green. And it's shown in the second episode that the giant vehicle they have inside their base, it turns out can actually switch out the rear end of this thing depending upon what color they can change their mode to. It could be metal, it could be heat. So, and of course they battle him a couple times. This actually is the missing boyfriend, believe it or not. Yeah, they just happen to find him just by sheer coincidence. And like, oh, he has a grudge against the company, which happened to be the same company made Shoto's hat for some reason. And they explained the whole thing with the Geo Memory Library, which Philip has access to, believe it or not. But the thing is, he has not read every single book in there. So, in a way, Philip is basically Shotaro's Google search engine. That is literally what his use is in the show. Well, one of his uses, aside from being the other half of Double. And also dressing like a girl. For some reason. I'm not sure why. Heck, even the actor kind of looks like a girl, but like it's clearly a guy. It's kind of weird saying this for a character like him, where it's like just the way he dresses. It just, I guess he wants to be fashionable and put two pretties in his hair for reasons to make himself so different. Yeah, in American perspective, they might see Philip as being too girly. This ought to be a guy, be very feminine. That's how an American might perceive him. But I see it as a lifestyle choice for him. If he wanted to basically dress that way, fine. It's just how some Americans might feel by looking at Philip, per se. The actor himself, I think he has since retired. Oh, he's also a singer. Currently, he's 32 years old. And he's also married, too. Good for him. And apparently he had to drop out of high school during his freshman year to work on the show. But he had this NDA. He couldn't tell his family he was on the show until the show was announced. Makes kind of sense to do that. To have NDA associated with a show like this. Voice actors go to the same thing, so I'm not all that surprised about this. Yep. Yeah. So the clothing thing, wind scale, is basically where Shoto gets his hat. Yosuke is the guy who's the Mega Monster. I mean, and he only appears just as one episode. Yep. Where they fight him, beat him, and then he's murdered by a T-Rex. Yep. Who turns out to be Shoto's childhood friend. Yeah. And she does not die. Nope, she does not die. They actually sort of, like, she actually liked the company because they kept stealing her ideas, which she was not happy with. All she wanted just to help the city, which I think was a nice thing to do. And then she became a monster because she bought basically this. Also, a couple of detectives that he interacts with in the show, one of whom do not like him very much at all. And you're probably thinking, like, why doesn't he like him? because he thinks he's interfering with their job. The other guy, who's a friend of his, basically finds some info related to the deal, which sparked the whole thing in the first place. Oh, and he discovered that Maria was T-Rex thanks to her shirt that he found at a place where he fought the T-Rex thing. And then eventually, well, then he kind of beats the thing. Then Maria is arrested, and she's not sitting in until after the show wraps up. Very nice opening 2 episodes, known as the W arc. But now talk about the movie itself. Movie has it's more like, I would say a lot of the first half of the movie Wars 2010, Kamen Rider X, Kamen Rider Double, and Decade. It's more like an extended version of the flashback we briefly saw in the first episode, where we're introduced to, well, Shotaro's mentor, who wears a white suit, wears a white hat, and of course he's an apprentice of his. The whole thing about being hard-boiled, and has a book known as The Long Goodbye, which was a book he had in the show itself. And in present day, of course, basically, where they're at a Christmas party, we carry someone we're going to see really soon. And then, of course, there's the whole thing about it. Then the celebrity stops by, who hires him to find out what happened with with the sister, who's presumably alive, despite the fact she's been dead for about 5 years. Died in a boating accident, believe it or not. Yes. And it turns out this is the work of a Deathbot. Yep. Which also is a priest. Deathbot is posed as not as a priest, but also a Grim Reaper. Yes, a Grim Reaper. And it feels like an episode from the show itself, and then they go to the very building where Philip and Sotaro first met. So Sotaro and his mentor are in this building, and then we see his mentor become Kamen Skull. Yes, this was the kind of in a way the first time that he becomes Kamen Skull, where he just takes off his coat and just transforms right there. Beats up monsters. Beats one monster who's called Taboo, who actually is the eldest daughter. Oh, I forgot to mention about the whole thing with the daughter. So the eldest daughter is also known as Taboo. She just got mysteriously engaged to this very well-selling dealer. Yes. Who debuts in episode 2. Her name is Siko Sakazaki. So she gets married to a guy by the name of Kohiko Sudo, which for some weird reason, not sure why the world they decided to do this with this character, when they introduce him, well, he's walking to a room butt naked. Yes, he is butt naked. Do not know the reason for this. He just is. And then he gets Injecticons, basically part of the family. When he gets married to the oldest daughter, Seiko, who is 30. He, of course, don't know how old he is, but apparently she was maybe infatuated with his handsomeness, maybe. There's also a cat named Mick. Yeah, so forgot to mention that, but so then of course Philip and Sotaro have an argument, and of course Sotaro goes to the gravesite of his chiefs where he died. They couldn't find the body, despite the fact he clearly died. He got shot in the back with bullets. So then they flash back to the night of the thing, where that's when we show him become Kamen Skull, and then Sotaro randomly finds Philip, and Philip gets transported to a Gia tower, his chief, of course, scolds him for disobeying his orders, and then Sotochi just proceeds to go into Philip's mind, or he's the one giving the name Philip, and that's what goes into the main part of the episode. Becomes double, battles the monsters, Bill explodes, and then of course basically they found the whole thing with the Deadbot thing, and then of course they ride off to chase him, and then we stop there. And by the way, this whole segment in the movie of Double's segment is 42 minutes. Yeah, kind of what I just explained. Took up, of course, the first 42 minutes of this hour and 40-minute movie. Yes, seriously. And then we have the reason why I decided to watch this movie in the first place. The Kamen Decade final chapter. Where it starts off with Skyrider, Super One, and I think Deno being beaten by Decade because he's beaten up the Kamen Riders. For reasons, per se. And then he battles more Kamen Riders. Eventually he's down to Yurishi, who is the Kuga in this universe. He defeats him. And everybody, of course, Natsume's missing him, of course. So after she sees that, well, also we see the AR version of human electric wave. Basically, it's Tackle. Yeah, I was kind of surprised basically to see her here. By the way, not the same actress, no. Because the actress who originally played her passed away in the 70s, so not her, but at least the cast of the actress is pretty. Good thing for doing that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also during this, it becomes really weird with Decades stuff. Yeah. Yeah, this will be this version of Tackle's only appearance because she dies. Currently, she's 30 years old, but I think at the time she was probably like, oh my god, she was really young. Let's see, this came out, she was born in 94, so she was probably 15. Yeah, pretty young, and she's currently 30 right now. Yeah, 30 years old. Yep. And she just hangs around with... and punching taking off her helmet, something that the original could not do for some reason. And apparently this one was killed by one of the villains in the movie, which we'll get to them. Yeah, also at one point he battles Commander J, the giant one, who was smashing a parking garage. And Natsume, having enough, proceeds to have Kivala, she shows up, and then she bites Natsume and she becomes Kamen Rider Kivala. Or she fights Seke briefly and then proceeds to destroy his henshin device by stabbing him right to the freaking gut, killing him. Also, he no longer uses his camera because he smashed it, but they do in fact find a pitch with him later on when they bring it back. And then apparently with his death, all the Riders he defeated just magically come back to life. Yep, they all get revived. Meanwhile, though, Edgy, of course, who does appear in the double segment, he's had to get some basically probably some ramen, and then he sees a squid and beer, and he's like, "Oh crap, not this again," because he's referencing basically the All Rise vs. Die shocker, and then Natsume, the mysterious prophet who basically the show never explained where the heck he came from, Then the Black Cape from the movie from All Rise for Dinosaur comes back, and he becomes Doc Death once again. And Natsume, Naruki, he becomes Colonel Zal. And I'm like, really? You bring back a villain, which of the 4 generals from the original Kamen series, he was the least interesting. Yeah. And they apparently work with a new Wasp woman, who is basically their second command. I gotta admit, the Wasp woman movie is very pretty. And this woman here is also the water pollution minister from Goandra. Yep. Which this woman is very pretty. Yeah, I think at the time when she did this movie, which came out in 2009, she must have been like 28. How is she now? 43. Yeah, and this woman is the person who killed Tackle, apparently. So, and they formed this new organization, Super Shocker, with Daros, the main villain of Kamen Zio, and they bring in several shower. They bring in Zuja, who is basically who originally debuted in Kamen Rider vs. Shocker. Jaggerman, who is from the original series. Bearded Lizard Man. Hetchmillion, who's actually Hetchmillion is actually General Black's monster form. Yeah. Kind of interesting they brought him back here for this. Yeah. This is actually his first actual appearance he's made. Well, in his monster form, actually. First time since V3. Kind of interesting to bring him back here. And Cobra Man Goro, who is the main villain of Kamen Rider J. And of course, they bring in monsters. Let's see, they bring in from the Heisei era. They bring in the Bat Monster from the Bat Theme Grongi from Kuga. He gets back for this. So they bring back 2 Kuga monsters. Loris Falco from Kamen Rider Agato. Soul Spider from Kamen Rider Ryoki. Scorpion Akimuk from Kamen Rider 5's. Titan from Stronger, though it's actually his yeah, his appearance here was kind of interesting. Oh, yuck. I bring a character named Konobo, who's a monster from Hibiki. A monster from Kamen Rider Kabuto, a worm. 2 monsters from Deno, and 1 from Kiva. So, that's Super Shocker, this small, tiny organization. And during this, basically, with Yosuke coming back, and of course, Dei and Kaito here, Chi, Natsumi, and Yusuke hold up a picture, the only picture taken of Tasaka, and they hold the picture up, and then he's magically revived. And this is accomplished because he took pictures of all the previous Kamen Riders. So, then, of course, with him being back, and of course, oh yeah, you basically so have to beat me, you join Super Soccer. And then during this, for some random reason, they're chasing around with fighting all these monsters, and then all of a sudden, the Super Crisis Fortress makes its return to the Kamen franchise. First time it's appeared since the end of RX. So it's like, since the end of RX, we've seen the return of first General Jark, and, well, of course, also, we see the return of first RX himself, and then General Jark, and now General Jark's base, the Crisis Fortress, which apparently was underground in this area of the main Earth for reasons. Like, oh, it's back, and it's under control of the main villain of Zeo, who summons his own monster to fight them, and of course, this kills Wasp Woman, and then just by sheer randomness, the thing just has a buff cliffhanger where he's being chased by an elephant robot, and then they come back, and then for some weird reason, as a way to have these two characters cross over between Double and Decade, they just happen to be driving by each other. And I was like, aren't you Decade? Yes, aren't you Double? And he's like, back me up. Okay. And of course he has his own monster he's fighting there, who gets possessed by the creature from Zeo. Natsuya goes back to his normal prophet look he's had from the show. And of course also basically Del proceeds to take control of the elephant, who proceeds to like tear apart the Crisis Fortress. Well, don't worry, it will be back in a couple years for tension, this particular ship, because it also served as the main base operations for a revived Die Shocker. He wears beats, and then of course Doors take control of this spot, and then of course they have where let's have Decade do the final form for Devil by splitting the two in half and form two separate bodies and have a three-way Raider kick, defeating the monster. And they go off their own thing. Double does Basic's Christmas Party. Decade just has one new background, whereas Long Grinding Road. But as in the case of Decade, well, he will return in Super Attention 2 years, along with DN. As for Natsumi, I think this is one of her final appearances ever in the Kamen franchise. Let's see. Oh, she does return once after this. Let's see. After this movie, she does not appear again until an episode of Writer Time. Yeah, that's when she returns. Which is Writer Time thing. Came out in 2021. So she would not return for 12 years. The episode she appears in is like a novel with just, basically it's like two novels, actually a novel and a manga, and then she returns for this. So we probably think with her story, is she pretty much done? Yes, she is pretty much done. She has nothing left for her at all. Her story is done. The end. He, along with Decade, will return for Zio. Zio. Yes, they will. They will both return for that show, which I will review in the future. Not next one per se. As for the AR version of Kuga, he would also return in Writer Time. Yep, he returned in Writer Time right after this. 12 years later, that's the next time we see him. For the version of Kamen Agato, this movie will be his last appearance. Okay, yeah, it just seems as though like a lot of the AR versions of these writers appeared Decade. This movie was pretty much their finale. Oh yeah, definitely. They did not appear ever again in the franchise. Nope. This is basically all their goodbye, so we won't see them again. Oh, the post-credits movie does debut Kamen XL. Yep. Skyrider, Super 1, J, and those three, they will return in team-ups, per se. As for the Riot Trooper who appeared in this movie, they will return after this in one of the Denna movies. And it's like their appearance is very special. The last appearance actually was in their 5 movie, per se. Mm-hmm. But as for the owner of the studio, I think, yeah, this movie was his final appearance. So you can definitely say, yeah, a lot of the characters from Decade, this is their last appearance ever. With the exception of Decade, Natsume, The End, just these 3 return. No one else who debuted in Decade will return. This is their swan song. This is like the final goodbye for them. It's fine. What I think of the epilogue final chapter for Decade, it was a very interesting conclusion, per se. I would say it did a much better job wrapping up the story than the actual main show, with the exception of basically one of our villains in the show, Nagarata. Yeah, he would actually return after this. His appearances would be very sporadic. Yeah, so after this movie wrapped up, he will return in the first Super Tension movie. He also later returned in a couple stuff for Commander Gem, and then he'll pop up in Rider Time, Decade versus Zio, that web series, and that'll be it for him. Alright. But in the case Decade, I'm done talking about Decade for now. Unless, of course, it's got star spots. Yeah. But Double, we'll do that forward. Okay, so that'd be pretty much it for the video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications. Next up, basically, is going to be, well, I've been waiting for this for the past 2 months. I'm going to talk about a show that a lot of people are bashing online because of animation. One Punch Man Season 3. Okay, next video. Bye.